Hello and welcome to Carrot and Stick. I'm Roy Kaunds. If you are a Labour Party supporter, this is the time to scroll up and move on to something else, because my guest today is Gaurav Sharma. Welcome to the show, Gaurav.
Thank you, Roy. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. Gaurav, last evening when you announced that you have resigned from Parliament, what sort of support have you received?
Oh, look, tremendous amount of support. Even before, in the last 2 months when I've been going through the whole ordeal, just lots of people writing to me, sending letters, sending postcards, flowers, even to my offices. Somebody came in with some sweets as well. So, lots of things. But especially since the resignation, a lot of people have written in support saying that, if I need any help, whether it's volunteering, somebody to do the flyers, door knocking, anything, that they're more than happy to come along. And there were others who said, well, look, I don't live in Hamilton, but my family members do, or my friends do, and I'm going to recommend that they do vote for you. Right.
That is really encouraging. I want to ask you, on the 11th of August, when you did that op-ed piece in the Herald, that probably was the last straw.
Yeah.
Okay. Things must have been simmering for a long time. Tell me about that journey. What actually was the last straw on the camel's back?
Well, look, the whole journey has taken over 1.5 years. As I said, even before I started and took my oath, the person who was supposed to be relationship manager, and the way it works is one relationship manager looks after 15-20 MPs. That person was involved in stopping me getting selected. They are a Labour Party member. And I talked about that conflict of interest right from the beginning. Parliamentary Services said, don't worry about it, we'll manage it. And then as my first staff member, there was a big issue because this person wasn't showing up to work. They were drunk at work. They deleted all the emails without replying. Yeah. They weren't able to do simple tasks like booking flights and accommodation and replying to events. So it became really difficult to just carry on my job as an MP. When I complained about this person, instead of helping figure it out and resolve it, that relationship manager made life more difficult. And then the Labour Party whips made the life even more difficult. Now, the important thing to understand here is that this staff member was only working for me part-time. They were working for another MP part-time. And what was happening was that other MP was using them to do household chores.
Really?
Yeah. So, go and do groceries and get the key and do this and do that in the weekend. And on the weekday when I would fly to Wellington, I said, where's this staff member? Oh, they're actually off at home, time off in lieu. For what? Oh, well, they were helping the other MP who also employs them do household chores. So that's how I actually found out that the money was being misused. And again, I laid a complaint and said, this is not okay. The person I laid the complaint to, the relationship manager again, instead of
was the one who did not want your nomination in the first place.
Yes, but it gets worse because that person, that relationship manager, used to be the secretary for that MP in their previous job.
Right.
So there was such a lot of conflict of interest. So instead of investigating it as an independent body, Parliamentary Services, that relationship manager ended up telling the Labour Party, because they're a Labour member, that this is what Gaurav Sharma is saying. So instead of looking into it, Labour started threatening me and bullying me even more. And they said, you can't say things like that. What if, this relationship manager had gone and told somebody else, the Labour Party could lose. And the only way New Zealand can move forward is if Labour is in government, right? And the party always comes before the country. So there's all these issues with that staff member. Now, moving forward, there's been other two staff members. I've had other staff members. And again, just to completely clarify this, most of these people have not been, they've been on very set contracts, like a 3-month contract or 6-month contract. So it's not that, some people have tried to make the perception that you've had too many people come in and out of the door. That's not true. These people were hired for very specific time periods. What happened was, for example, there's another person, their contract was expiring, right? And they said, I want a job, desperately want to keep the job. And I said, well, no, we don't want to keep you. And part of the problem was this person, again, came 8 hours late to work and was drunk. Right, we couldn't find them, and they came to work at 5 o'clock instead of coming to work at 8:30, and they were completely drunk. We made a written complaint to Parliamentary Services, never investigated. Another time, a constituent calls me and says, you guys are all wasting taxpayers' money, the Labour Party and you. And I said, what happened? He said, just outside my house, there's all these flyers and magnets and all that with your face on it thrown by somebody. Same staff member had thrown them on the side of the road and gone home and was sleeping.
So that was supposed sort of a marketing thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So flyers and all of that. And so instead of doing what they were hired to do, they just threw it out in the corner of a road and went home.
Went home and was just sleeping.
And the person who contacted you was not related to anyone.
Nothing, no. Okay. And the thing is, right? Like, I went to their house, took photo of the flyers and magnets. I can tell you where this person lives. I've got the whole, paper trail to show you this happened. Again, a complaint was laid. Nothing came out of it.
Now tell me something. The other staff member who you said worked, with the MP with whom you shared, their chores. Is it allowed? I mean, are they allowed to do some household chores or?
Oh, no, definitely not. No.
Okay. So in that sense, it was actually, misuse of and yet they did not do anything about it.
No, and what's interesting is Parliamentary Services, even in the last 2 months, have released a statement. And they've said that, oh no, what Gaurav was saying was that this staff member shouldn't have been allowed to fly somewhere.
Right.
That's not true.
Yeah.
What I was talking about was what happened to, why are they working in a personal capacity for somebody, and that's not okay.
And there was another staffer, because I read that in your Facebook post, who was missing her home, so she used to cry because she was not. And then they used that and said that she cried because you harassed her or bullied her.
And it's such an interesting story, right? This person worked for me for like 11, 12 days. Cried on day 3 of the job, right? And said, I'm
because she was feeling homesick.
Yeah, and they weren't from Hamilton, they'd come from another city. And for the time period that she worked for me, every single day went back to their home city and came in the morning and went back to the home city and came back. But I was the one who said to Parliamentary Services, let's put a support around this person. And I was assured that was being done. Then this person ends up coming to office and saying, look, I really miss my family. I'm going back home. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And the team leader said, well, no, you can't just leave like that. They have to serve a notice period.
Right.
And then they completely flipped around and said, oh, well, you're bullying me. I'm going to leave because I have a job which is starting on Monday. So they already had a job lined up. But what's interesting is Parliamentary Services, their relationship manager, turns around and says, oh, in the last phone call I had with you, I did raise these concerns. What they didn't realize was that the team leader was on the phone call too. And they would be, right? Because they're managing the same person. And we were driving from an event. And I can tell you the exact event, the date. I can show you the photographs. I was in Cambridge. We were launching a hydrogen truck from Hyundai. We're coming back to the electorate. And on that journey, they were like, everything is fine.
Yeah.
Then went on to fabricate that, no, I raised all these things with you. The team leader then says, actually, I was on the phone call. And they got taken aback.
Yeah.
Then for 6 weeks, no conversation.
They just disappeared.
Disappeared. And then they said, we don't want to talk about it. Right? So how is that, with all this evidence, there's no investigation at all?
So is this because you sort of were trying to put some procedures in place and they felt it was you're upsetting the apple cart, or was it more personal?
Well, as my first article on 11th of August said, Parliamentary Services works with the parties to basically bully their MPs and to keep them in line. Right? What that means is if they know anything about you that is used against you to tell you that next time we won't give you a good list placement,
right? Or
if you say this, we're not going to do this, or if you do that, we're not going to do that, and all of that tactic is used against you. On the other hand, if you're a minister, one of the interesting things is in the last 2 months that this has happened, I've had so many parliamentary staffers come to me and they have said, what, I actually made a complaint against the minister.
And nothing was done.
Labour minister, nothing was done. Nothing was done about it because the ministers are liked by the party, right? They're at the top of the hierarchy. So then the staff members get no support.
Right.
If you're a backbencher and somebody says something against you, whether or not, it can be proven or not, it's then used against you.
Right.
So that's how, the party sort of plays that politics.
Unfortunately, I think that's quite endemic in New Zealand, where there are power structures. So what you're talking about is parliament, but I think the same thing would hold true in government departments as well as, in maybe some private sector also, where people try to protest and it goes nowhere because the powers are too powerful.
Yeah, and what I've been hearing from people in the last few months is that it has happened to them. It's happened to their wife or husband, their sister and brother and friend. And I mean, one person was telling me how They were part of a soccer club for a 7-year-old, and there was some disagreement, and they got removed from the board, right? Nothing, no investigation, no conversation, nothing.
Yeah.
And they were like, we're so stressed out by it, the whole family is taking antidepressants.
Right.
And they were saying, this is a 7-year-old soccer club, and it's the same level of, bullying and things that are going on. But that's across the board. That is happening in New Zealand.
In fact, while people talk about racism and other things, I think bullying is actually quite rampant in New Zealand. And one of the reasons I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you have got this kind of groundswell of support behind you is because you have actually tackled an issue which a lot of people are suffering from.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about racism, right? Like, I think bullying in a way can be driven by many things, right? Sometimes it's about race, sometimes it's about gender. It can be about lots of different things where people don't see eye to eye. And that's the common factor, that all of them get bullied one way or the other. And that's what I'm saying. So I'm getting support from across communities, not just ethnic communities only, but Pākehās, Māori, everyone who's been through something similar in their own setting.
What has actually got my goat is when you raise these issues, forget about the parliamentary services brushing it under the carpet or even your labor caucus. It is the media which actually did not really highlight what was the genesis of the issue, which is bullying. For example, just today, Tim Roxburgh, who was on Newstalk ZB this afternoon, he's made some very disparaging comments about you, and he said that maybe you're not a good man manager and maybe you need to understand that, And he says, it happens. He's saying, he's telling his listeners, it happens that some people are not good man managers and they can't get along with the staff. I have not seen him refer even once to the issues that you have raised of staff. One of the things which I found very concerning was you said that one of your staff members actually used some constituent photographs or information and send it to their family because they knew that person. Can you just tell me about it? And these are some things which the media should talk about.
Well, exactly. So, this person's family member are known in the community, and they know constituents through different ways. So multiple times what's happened is they've actually released information by calling and just saying, hey mom, by the way, that person who used to live across the road, or this person used to do this, well, this is what's happened to them. This is how they're seeking help. Just letting you know. They've been caught red-handed, and we've made complaint and said, but that's not okay, you can't do that. So that's just, some
it's a complete breach of privacy.
Oh, it is.
Yeah, it is criminal offense, actually.
And the first staff member that I'm talking about, I don't know if you read that bit, that person, when, we kind of realized we didn't hire the right person. And one of the things you have to sign when you start a job is, has there ever been an issue, in the previous job? Well, it turns out that person had released information on social media, on Twitter, about somebody who had claimed to be raped. Right? And I'm going to tell you this staff member used to work at the Labour Party head office. So they were hired from a Labour Party head office. The sexual harassment case was at Labour Party, right? And they were working at reception. So the only way they came across that information was that they used to work at reception. And they tweeted out the name of the person, right? So then I went to Parliamentary Services and said, how can I trust this person to work with my constituents, right? Like, tell me how I'm going to do that. And I actually ended up blocking access to quite a few emails and drives. I completely, got punished for it because they were just like, well, you can't do that. You can't block things from your staff members. You can't contain things from staff members. But I said, there's sensitive data coming in to an MP's office. How can I trust somebody who's talking about a victim of a sexual harassment scandal?
And as I said, this is really my bugbear, that you put all this information out there, but not one of the media, people actually address that issue. All that they were interested in, knowing is, what are you going to do, or what the Labour Party going to do to you? That's all they were. So it really tells me that, the reporting was not, up to standard. That aside, this morning you appeared on TV1 and Jenny May asked you a question which I thought was shocking. She asked you, why don't you just walk off? Means leave politics. Just go and do your own thing.
If you take yourself out of that equation, though, and you look at how much money this is going to cost, again, the taxpayer, that's the crux of my question. Is this a selfish decision on your part? Why not just walk away?
Walk away from what?
Walk away from politics. Why not go back to your community? Why not become a GP in your community? Go back to that.
Me running or not running doesn't mean there won't be a by-election. Right? If I say that I'm walking away from it, doesn't mean there won't be a by-election. I'm an elected MP. That's not how it works. So I have had to resign because I'm concerned about my constituents not having a voice in Parliament if I am removed, if anybody is removed 6 months before the general election.
This is ridiculous. How did you feel when she asked you that question?
Well, one of the interesting things I do find often with journalists is because there's so many range of things they have to cover. Often they don't understand how things work.
Yeah.
So when she said to me, why call a by-election? You're wasting taxpayers' money, and walk off. And I said, well, what does it mean, walk off? She said, go and do medicine. And my question to her was, sorry, I don't think you understand how this works, right? I'm an elected MP.
Right.
If I walk off, that's a by-election. That's literally what's happening here.
Exactly.
So. And then I think she was taken a bit aback because she was saying, walk off, go do medicine, and then there won't be a by-election, somebody else will take your job. And I said, that's not how it works. But you're right, I guess the next point is, but why should I? And some people have said that to me, why don't you go back to medicine? You've got a background in that. My point is, right, I got into medicine because I wanted to make a difference. I want to help change the system, right? That system now happens to be Parliament, that happens to be the Labour Party. And there's a lot of things to look at, obviously beyond that too. So why should I walk away, right? If anything, what works in my favor is that because I have something to fall back on, I don't have to worry about things like what a few MPs do because they're always worried what happens to their career if they speak up.
Right.
And that's going to happen to a lot of Labour MPs, right? Like they're already worried what's going to happen next year. And they're concerned that if they would have said anything in my favor, they would be in trouble. People will make all their own sort of analysis. But as I said, what's interesting to me is, with journalism, a lot of people, even journalists, not your layperson, the lack of information. Somebody asked me at the press gallery yesterday and said, this is a blue seat and blah, 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 blah. And I said to them, well, you need to do your homework. It is the bellwether seat of the country. And then somebody said, oh, Hamilton East and West are both bellwether. No, Hamilton East is not the bellwether. Hamilton West is the bellwether seat of the country. In 16 out of 17 elections gone to the largest party.
Right.
That's the bellwether seat of the country.
Right.
It's not a blue seat.
Yeah.
It was blue because National was in government, right? So I think it's important to look at that. But these are journalists, right? These are journalists in press gallery asking you questions which just make no sense, right? There's no information behind it. And that's what I keep saying. So when people make all sorts of claims in, they say, maybe he won because of the party. We don't know. Everybody's speculating. But when you have 12,000 patients in the community, you have the highest swing in the country. 14,000 votes is the highest swing in the country. The highest number of votes Hamilton West has ever had, 20,000 votes plus. No candidates ever had it. But there'll be all sorts of speculation. I'm not saying it's all because of me, but I'm saying it's just interesting how all the political pundits
you were actually the first candidate of Indian extraction who won an electoral seat, and I think that will never be taken away from you. You came to this country when you were 12 years old, I think in the late 90s. I think when you were 18 years old, the New Zealand Herald carried a story saying that you were among the top 6 students in New Zealand. When you were going through all those highs as a teenager, did you ever think that this would be where you would end up?
No, look, I've never thought initially, that politics is where I would end up. But the reason I joined politics is because along the way, I realized that, I could make a difference as a doctor one-to-one. I can do a lot with my business degree. But politics really has the potential to make a big difference. As long as you're interested, right, and the system lets you. Right. So if your intention is right, and you get put in the right place, and the system lets you, you can make a massive change with politics.
How did you feel when people started calling you renegade MP, rebel MP, rogue MP? In fact, the last word rogue was actually pretty below the belt. If I was in your place, I would have been pretty miffed. How did you feel when they were I mean, did you keep a track of what they were saying?
No, so I think one of the good things is, I'm able to easily switch off when, that's this whole thing starts. So even like, for example, if I've done interviews today or in the last day or so when I've resigned, I don't spend too much time reading up the media interviews because everybody's going to have their own opinion, right? Regardless. But with the look, I mean, it's interesting that people will take that mana away from you, and instead of saying Dr. Gaurav Sharma, it's Gaurav Sharma. Then it becomes Rogue MP Gaurav Sharma. But then you have somebody like Duncan Webb, who's not a doctor. Is Dr. Duncan Webb. He's got a PhD, he's a doctor, but he's Dr. Duncan Webb. I'm Gaurav Sharma, Rogue MP. You've got Megan Wood, who was on radio, and she's Dr. Megan Wood, and you've got Rogue MP Gaurav Sharma. So obviously, media does play a part in that. But I'm the sort of person, once you get this sort of thing, I actually embrace it.
Right.
So, I often call people and I say, this is Rogue MP Gaurav Sharma calling, and people just laugh about it because, I think it's important to not let those things get to you.
You I think you have come out, shining from this entire episode. I think one thing which people will appreciate is that you have a spine of steel. A lesser person would just have been crushed, and I think that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah, and that's what they tried to do. So right after I wrote the article on 11th of August, they sent a list MP to my office, and I was a bit surprised because it's not like I'm very close to this list MP, but I thought how nice of them to come and talk to me. And basically the conversation was, what are you going to do from here on? What's your plan? Why don't you ask the Prime Minister's press secretary to write a statement and say that you had a mental health breakdown, and why don't you just leave quietly from the basement? And I said, well, why would I do that, right? I'm making serious allegations here. Somebody needs to look into that. Then they sent another MP to Hamilton from Auckland, and they were the one who told me that they've been sent by the party, but also the previous MP was also sent by the party. And again, she said the same thing. Basically, you say that you had a mental health breakdown, we send you on 2 months leave, and then you come back, and then you sit quietly. In 2023 you will go, otherwise we'll ruin your career. And Michael Wood said to me, not only will we ruin your political career, we'll ruin your medical career too. But I think what the this is a workplace relations minister, right? But what's amazing is, right, this is the person who lives in Mount Roskill, which is one of the highest number of ethnic communities, Indian communities, goes around talking to them about how great Indians are and all sorts of stuff, and then say something like that. But to make it even more interesting, he then calls an Indian organization, I'm not going to name them, and says Gaurav Sharma is not invited to your awards ceremony, right? And then when I RSVP, they just don't even reply. And then their executive members tell me that, hey, this is what's happening. Michael Wood is telling us not to come in. So they fight for it. I get re-invited back. When I go to the event, they said, well, you can't sit on the stage. Every MP from every party is allowed, but you're not allowed to sit on the stage. This is, Michael Wood, and that's what they said, because Michael Wood doesn't want it. But what's even more interesting is, the hypocrisy. And then he stands there and says, we're really proud of our Indian communities who are, first of all, he said, doctors, politicians, and I was thinking, that's two of those I take. But that's what I'm saying, right? I think we're being taken for a ride by our politicians in ethnic communities, but outside ethnic communities as well, right? Like where people do the tick boxing, they come to your Diwali, Holi and all that sort of stuff, but they're not interested in your issues, right? And when the time comes, they will punch you.
Right. I'm always upset about, when they come and say namaskaram, they say namaskar, and now they've realized that there is a divide in the Indian community with the north and south. So of late, they've started doing namaskar and namaskaram. Actually, if they want to say namaskar, they have to say it in 26 languages. So they don't even know what they're talking. They're just virtue signaling. And I think this is a lesson to the Indian community, that don't get taken in by all these tick boxes.
Exactly, and and that's exactly what the issue is, right? And I'll give you a couple more examples now. At the award ceremony that I'm talking about, Michael Wood's secretary, who happens to be on Labour Party's governing council, was a judge, along with Chris Carter, who is a former Labour MP. Both of them are judges. And guess who gets the award? Immigration New Zealand, which Michael is the minister of, right? That makes no sense. So my first question is, in last 4 years, all migrants have really suffered under immigration.
Right, and they get an award.
Why is the Indian community giving them an award? My second point is, this Indian organization then wrote to me, because I wrote about it on Facebook, and threatened me. And they said, don't you dare, call us out on this. And I didn't even write their name. If you do this, we will never invite you again to an event. Here's another interesting thing. Just a few days ago, in Hamilton, at the Sikh Gurdwara in Hamilton, Immigration New Zealand raided the Gurdwara.
Yeah.
They walked in with shoes. Nothing, no head covering. Then they went and picked up the cloth from Guru Granth Sahib.
Oh wow, my God!
Yeah, there were people there who were telling them what the tikanga is in the Gurdwara. And how did I know? I didn't read it in the news. My constituent contacted me and they said my parents are there, my kids were there, and for over an hour they were interrogated, little kids, asking them, like Immigration New Zealand harassing them, right? And there's no cultural competence. And you're telling me that the Indian organization decided that they were the best agency to deal with, right? And then after I've written it, they're saying to me, we will stop inviting you. Which is, how odd is that? But I think there is a problem in our Indian communities as well. Like we need to stand up for ourselves. And part of the problem, we don't have a good say is because I think our own Indian leaders are betraying us by not taking a stand for anything.
Exactly. I think many of them are, just looking at their own interests, but that's a topic for some other day. Talking on this same issue, I've been talking to a lot of Pacifica leaders, especially those who, don't support the Labour Party. And they are telling their constituents that this Labour Party is not the Labour Party which their parents knew and, loved. Or even the Indians, the Indians who first either came in the 60s or the Indians who came in the 80s. And Labour did a lot of good for them, sort of, especially in discrimination and all of that. But this Labour Party is not the original Labour Party. How do you see this?
Look, I completely agree with that, and obviously, I mean, I haven't been a member as long as those people have, I joined sometime around 2014. And even in that time, things have changed a lot. And I think the biggest problem is, the power has gone to their head. Because there is absolutely no conversation or feedback. And I say this as, somebody who was a member of parliament in the caucus. There was never a conversation about anything. Whether you want to talk about three waters, you want to talk about immigration, you want to talk about crime, you were never allowed to speak about it. And when you spoke about it, you were just told to shut up, right? And policies were never really discussed. Now this is the member of parliament. Now go a step further and talk to Labour members. I can tell you electorates where 5 people, 10 people, 20 people, when there's electorate in Christchurch, 20 people resigned. They just said, well, why would I be a member if the party that I'm supporting and is now in government is not even ready to listen to me? And that then spills out to the general public. Even if you're not a Labour member, they're not listening to you. So there is a big issue there, and that's what people are feeling.
So what is your message to all those Indians who support Labour because of some traditional legacy values or without actually understanding what the Labour Party stands for now?
Look, I say this to people across the board, right? Not just people for Labour, for National, ACT, Green, everybody. That you need to stop just having that loyalty based on ideology. Right? What you need to say is who's doing the best for the country. And one of the big problems we get in New Zealand is on the left you have people going, well, I'm so unhappy with Labour, I'm going to vote Greens. And then on the right you have people saying, I'm unhappy with National, I vote ACT, or the other way around. And the problem there is, right, because of that, the parties go, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? We're going to end up in a coalition with Greens or with ACT for the big parties. And because of that, they get away with it. Right? But if our voters said, well, I'm not happy, and I'm going to send a message here to the party that, we're not going to take this, right? And I will look the other way and find somebody else, maybe a centre party or any other party. And even now, so with me, so there are some Labour members who go, when, I completely believe in what you're saying. I know you've got the evidence, all of that. But the concern is, I don't want National to get in. So because of that, I'll just vote for Labour. I mean, it's like, but based on what though, right? And I think that's a big problem for our democracy, where people are just living in echo chambers.
And talking about democracy, again, Tim Roxburgh on News Talk ZB saying that why does Gaurav have to start another centrist party? And he reads out the names of all the parties, including the smaller ones like Opportunities and Advanced New Zealand and all of those types. And he says there are so many parties. Why do we? I think it is racist, because if a brown person, and let me say this loud, a brown person is starting a party, and suppose he gets brown following. Okay, when I say brown following, there are 5% of the New Zealand population are Indians. Assume that all 5% vote for you or your new party. Well, that gives you become a kingmaker. And I think this is something which these people won't like. This is my understanding, my reading of the situation. I don't want you to comment on this, but I think this is the issue.
But I think this is the same as bullying, as I said, right? Like people make those sort of comments for different reasons. It doesn't have to be racism. There's different reasons for it, right? Who knows? He could be a Labour member. I don't know. But my point is, I think throughout history, if you look back, right, people are there's always the underdogs who nobody appreciates, what they're trying to do. But my commitment is to the people of Hamilton, to the people of the country. And we've got to fight the fight, right? And I also say to people, right, like I may not win, like, it can happen, right? But the point I'm saying here is I must run,
right?
Because what the message I'm trying to send to the government is you can't stop people's voice.
Right.
You can't stop a little guy from speaking about, bullying, speaking about his rights and the rights of his constituents. Right. And that's the message to the government. Even if I lose, I'll be happy that I stood up to a government.
And how do you answer those people who are saying that you are being so self-centered that you're not looking at the fact that there's $1 million or whatever, $100,000 or whatever it is that is going to be spent on the by-election?
Yes. So look, first of all, definitely want to acknowledge, like there is a lot of money involved in running a by-election, and it's unfortunate that, that's how it has to be. From my side, as I've said repeatedly, the Labour Party wants to remove me 6 months before the general election. What that means is there won't be a by-election,
right,
and people of Hamilton won't have a voice, right? I'm not even saying that voice has to be me, right? In the by-election, people might decide to vote for the Labour MP,
right?
Labour candidate, right? They might become an MP. My concern here is around democracy for New Zealand, right? If they decide to vote for a New Zealand First or Labour or whoever, it's up to them, right? That's not for me to decide. So it's not me that who's wanting to do a by-election. It's how they've done their process that has led to this. But I'm also going to say, right, this is the same party which 2 weeks ago was endorsing Paul Eagle, sitting Labour MP, getting paid for MP salary, and then did 20,000 flyers from his MP budget all across the country. So right, when you have people like that and being endorsed by the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister with the full intention that the person would win, because he was a favourite to win, then there would have been a by-election. Right. So why is it different for me compared to them? But this is what I'm saying, right? Labour's motto really is that, do as we say, don't do as we do.
Right. So, Gaurav, if your name was not Gaurav Sharma, if it was Tim Brown or something like that, do you think things would have been different?
Potentially. I mean, look, I think yes and no. You read about people who put CVs through and they never get forward on that. I think for me in the election, first and second, 2017-2020 election, it was definitely hard. I've talked openly about the fact that there was racism. People wouldn't shake my hands. Some people threatened a lady to remove my signs. As well
in 2017
in 2020 there were 5 people who, so 2 one time, 3 at the time, and they asked this lady to remove my signs and basically said we don't want a Indian curry
because she had put your billboards on her property.
That's right. So we'd put our billboards on her
and
property.
She allowed you to do that.
That's right. And basically those 5 people basically said, we don't want a curry candidate. And then, out of concern for her safety, we removed it. Well, interestingly, turns out she was a Māori lady herself. She talked to her kids, and then turns out her grandkids were my patients. So she called me back and she said, I didn't realize you were my grandkid's doctor, and they went to multiple doctors before they found you, and they're very happy with you. So my kids want you to put their sign back on. So then the community came together, the neighborhood came together, and they forced me to put the sign. I was more concerned about her safety.
Right.
So, there are people out there on the other side too who appreciate the work you're doing. So, it's obviously been hard having a weird name or a different name. But maybe, that's what makes people remember it now.
Right.
That things have...
Well, I look at you may not agree with me, but I look at you as the Indian Winston Peters, who shook up things. Gaurav Sharma, thank you so much for talking to us and being so candid and open. All the best to your venture. I think you'll get a lot of support, and here's wishing you all the best.
Thank you so much, Roy. Thank you for having me.